Good morning, everyone, and welcome. I'm Don Kettle, Dean of the School of Public Policy, and want to welcome all of you here for this terribly important event. It is, as we know, and you may have you paid any casual attention to this election campaign, the budget is, if not the first issue, or the first and the second issue, it's the first and second and the third most important issue. You can talk about jobs, but there is no long-term solution to jobs or to world peace or anything else without first getting our fiscal house in order. And it's one thing talking about the nation's future, but we're here also today to talk about your future, because in the end, what's most important and the biggest responsibility for all of us up here is to make sure that we do our best to make sure that you have the future that you need and that you deserve, that the country owes it to you to be able to build the country that you want and that we've spent so much time laboring for. That's what we're here today to try to not only celebrate, but to work and try to solve. Can we find a way to make all of you into budget heroes? And so we're very, very pleased today to be able to launch this effort. We're especially pleased to be able to do this in partnership with the Wilson Center, which is, by any measure, one of Washington's premier think tanks. What they put together is a new budget game, which is up to the minute, freshened with the very most recent data, so that if you want to know whether or not you can fact check the data, we've got the data that are the best that there is. And the question is now, what do we do with it? First, can we find a way to make the tough decisions? And that's your job over the next hour, to be able to figure out how to do that. But secondly, what is it that we learn about the process of making those decisions that can help us strengthen our political process? So that's why we're so pleased and proud to have a chance to be able to partner with the Wilson Center in this important event. As you may know, first we're going to play the game here and produce the solutions that you believe in, and then literally we're going to take them downtown to the Capitol to a press conference to engage national leaders on how to try to get traction on the process that you're working so hard to try to advance. It's my great pleasure here first to introduce Joe Gildenhorn, former United States Ambassador to Switzerland, a former president of the Board of Trustees at the University of Maryland, and chairman of the board of the Wilson Center. Joe Gildenhorn, you'll be having a chance to hear from him later, but also to introduce the Honorable Jane Harman, former member of Congress from California. And as you look over her list of the hot spots that she's visited during her time, she was in North Korea, Syria, Libya, Afghanistan, Pakistan, Yemen, Guantanamo Bay, but probably nothing quite rivals the difficulty of tackling the federal budget. So we're very pleased to have her here with us. She has had a distinguished series of awards, including the National Intelligence Distinguished Public Service Medal. She's been named one of the 50 most influential Democrats on foreign policy by Foreign Policy magazine. She is a product of Los Angeles Public Schools, a magna cum laude graduate of Smith College, Phi Beta Kappa, went to Harvard Law School, spent years as a teacher, actually, in the vineyards teaching public policy and international relations at UCLA, was a long-term serving member of Congress, and then, most importantly for our partnership here, the Wilson Center was both wise and smart and lucky enough to be able to lure her from Congress to become the head of the Wilson Center. We're very pleased with this partnership, which is the first of many important steps that the School of Public Policy and the Wilson Center will be taking together. It's my great pleasure to introduce the Honorable Jane Harman.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Thank you, Don. Morning. Did everybody get pizza? Let's talk about the important things. Is everybody registered to vote? Is everybody planning to vote on November 6th? Do I see any? If you're shaking your head, anyone who's not doing this, leave now. How many people think you're adequately informed about the federal budget? You're adequate, you know everything? Well, then I hope you will sign up for one of the campaigns and teach one of these people something. How many feel you're not adequately informed about the federal budget? Even Joe is not adequately. What about Don? What about the teachers here? Let's see here. What about the ACE Wilson staff? Diane knows everything? She knows a lot. Okay, well, she worked on this game. That's why she knows a lot, and that's why you're going to be excited to play this game. I want to thank the Public Policy School, especially Don, for hosting us. I want to thank my brother Joe for all that he's done for the University of Maryland and all that he does at the Wilson Center. I want to thank American Public Media, where are you, for buttons, badges, and goodies, and for enormous strategic and intellectual advice on developing and promoting this game. This game is a terrific thing, and let me explain that the Wilson Center has been around for 40 years. It is the living memorial to our only PhD president. How many of you knew that? Okay. Our only PhD president, and it fuses his two passions, which were scholarship and policy. And the last place I worked, which you heard was the United States Congress, doesn't do that anymore. And so we are going outside to find people to help Congress to do that. I think none of you would defend Congress's, and would anyone defend Congress's actions on the budget in the 112th Congress? No. There are a few shopping days left, just a week now, but after the election, there will be the so-called lame duck Congress, when at least some people are predicting something will happen. And our goal in getting this game out and about to even more than 1.3 million players is to make the public into the budget heroes that we lack in elected office, and have you help elected officials, the ones you like, and maybe even a few you don't like, make better informed decisions. And we predict that as you get into the guts of this game, we're coming out today, you're the first to play the election edition of Budget Hero. You will really learn what some of these new options are, and whether you think, playing your values, they make you can, and people you trust can make better decisions. We've added 27 new policy cards. I'm sure as you get into this, you'll see what they are, including Ryan Medicare and Medicaid plans, taxing sugar-sweetened beverages. Thought you'd all like that. Changing distribution of Social Security benefits, and many more. The update includes the latest baseline numbers and projections from the Congressional Budget Office and other non-partisan research institutions. You'll see, this is not a partisan proposal here. Like the Congressional Research Service, that means the game is transparent and, unlike so much of the information out there today, free from spin. We've learned a lot from the game over the last 4 years. It was first released in 2007. The top policy choice for Democrats, independents, and libertarians was rapidly decreasing troop numbers in Iraq and Afghanistan. Meanwhile, cutting discretionary spending topped the policies played by Republicans, a card that didn't even crack the top 10 for Democrats. That may not be surprising, but demographic data from the game also shows wide support among players regardless of age, household income, gender, or party affiliation for reforming and simplifying the tax code. How many people are for that? Anybody not for that? Anybody not care? No, okay. And interestingly, increasing, this is interesting, the amount wealthy seniors pay for drugs. How many are for that? How many are against that? You can raise your hand, you can be against, it's a democracy, even at the University of Maryland. We've played this game with hundreds of people, and many of them are students. The most fun people are students. And it quickly becomes clear to everyone that without compromise, little progress can be made. So, with that, let me turn over the mic to the Wilson Center's Diane Tucker. Diane, you need to speak directly into the mic, or you will not be heard. And APM's Linda Fanton, who was, I was just celebrating a minute ago. Together, our nonpartisan organizations have been working on serious games for the past decade. They will tell you more about the election edition of this game, and then let you play. And I will be fascinated. I'd like to hear at the end of this how many of you changed some of your views after playing the game and seeing what impact some of your cuts or some of your ads had on getting to budget sanity over 10 years. I predict that most of you will change some of your views. I don't know which views you'll change. But the point of this is that if you don't go into this game with somewhat of an open mind, and if you don't go into the political world as a voter trying to reach some compromise, you don't get anywhere. So we'll see if I'm right. Thanks for coming, and welcome to Diane and Linda. Take care.
I'm Diane. We met before. Nice. I'm sorry. And here's Linda.
Hi, everybody. Met a few of you earlier as well.
First, actually, we thought it might be helpful. One can learn some things about what Budget Hero does by actually hearing a little bit about me and what brought me to games. I actually began as a person. I began in actually traditional journalism, unidirectional media, and worked for the BBC, ultimately running the New York News Bureau. However, with time, I became actually enormously frustrated by the degree to which a unidirectional medium, one which puts players, makes audience members sort of passive recipients of information, how much that could actually change people's minds. So we can see some of that too, and the impulse toward that even in how partisan our various media sources, our cable systems are becoming, where the Fox people listen to, conservatives listen to Fox and progressives listen to MSNBC, and anyway, we're getting increasingly sort of involved in our own work. So I became frustrated as a person who'd entered this form of work, interested in learning more all the time, interested in actually having a chance, a role to play in public education, that actually the presentation of facts was not adequate through those traditional media. I came to learn about games. Games as a mechanism for, well, just think about them, right? I mean, games are essentially a method by which people can be obliged to inhabit a point of view other than their own, right? Oops, sorry. Yeah, let's take that away.
Sorry about that.
It can be your job to be, for example, there's a game called Peacemaker in which people play either as the Palestinian president or as the Israeli prime minister and have to make those decisions accordingly, in ways that are going to appeal to their constituencies or people, in the world they have to be aware of. And initially they had people play as the opposite, say Israelis play as Palestinians and Palestinians play as Israelis. And the data demonstrated that they actually saw things through that framework. They saw things through that experience they had not seen otherwise. And these were people who were, adults who'd lived through, lifetimes. So this is part of what makes Budget Hero, these various ways in which games avail people of new opportunities. It's among the things that makes Budget Hero so special. It takes this very abstract, very distant kind of experience, federal budget and huge, massive numbers, and makes it very, very concrete. You have actual policies that people are proposing. You have a chance to play them immediately. And, for much of us who are not ourselves Congresspeople, the chance to, we have sort of our knowledge of what's happening is all very remote, and it's text-based. This is something that actually gives people a much more experience-based kind of learning, and one that makes it's actually quite personal. So we hope that those kinds of advantages will make, those kinds of attributes to the play will make you have a different kind of experience, and we hope you find it a useful one. Thanks.
Thanks, Diane. So I come at this I'm on the journalism side of the partnership. So American Public Media is one of the largest producers of public radio content and also owns public radio stations, Minnesota Public Radio, Southern California Public Radio. We produce the business show Marketplace, Prairie Home Companion with Garrison Keillor. And we're also the creators of the Public Insight Network, which as Diane was saying, I come out of this from a journalism background as well, but much more humble beginnings. I worked in small weekly newspapers for many years, where you really learn you're kind of the steward for the community's primary source for local news, and there's a certain accountability there that the more I progressed and took on daily journalism jobs and sort of got a little more important issues, you might think, I became more and more distant from the people. And what I learned through those jobs is that people have incredible expertise and knowledge, much more than actual journalists. And if you can find a way to tap into that insight and that intelligence, and you can infuse that into your reporting, you can actually make your reporting more relevant, more revelatory, more transparent, more trustworthy. And so that's why American Public Media created the Public Insight Network. It's sort of a way to marry technology with just, you know, on-the-ground reporting. But we capture all that insight in a searchable database. So when we partnered with Wilson on Budget Hero, I think we had a couple of things in mind. One is the game itself has an incredible amount of journalism in it. As Diane can attest, because she's been working on this, as well as Aaron and others from the Wilson Center, these policy options and the pros and the cons and the social impact statements are well researched. You know, they're balanced, they're unbiased, and the idea is to give you as many facts as we can so that you can make the decision about whether those policies resonate with you, and then see the effects that they have on the budget. So the other thing, so more about the Public Insight Network, it's just a pipeline, if you will. It's just a way to connect journalists with everyday people who have knowledge and expertise on any number of subjects. And right now, I think we have more than 170,000 people around the country just like you who've signed up to inform journalism at some 80 newsrooms. So WAMU, NPR, Washington Post, Miami Herald, you know, the Center for Public Integrity, Center for Investigative Reporting, they're all part of this large network. And it's just a way to sort of expand our knowledge as journalists and to give you a more meaningful way to actually inform the reporting and the media that you're getting. With Budget Hero, if you, at the beginning of the game, if you've noticed, you have a chance to sign up for this Public Insight Network so you can continue the conversation and continue to offer your insights. And through that vehicle, we've learned a lot about the American public, about the role of government in their lives, about what's really top of mind and important to them. So we've learned a lot about the electorate. As Jane mentioned, you know, more than 1.3 million games played over the last 4 years. And so being able to reach out and learn from folks is actually, that intelligence helps make journalists more in touch with how these policies actually play out in people's lives. So it encourages people to check their ideological baggage at the doorstep and really struggle with the hard trade-offs that are involved in setting our nation's budget on a sustainable path. And it comes at, I think, a really important time where the message we keep hearing is how divided Americans are, and we actually don't see quite that much division when people actually make decisions in an environment like, what's it gonna cost? And one of the big learnings from the game so far is just, one, how willing people are to make trade-offs that are counter to their own personal interests. For instance, you know, we've heard from an aviation engineer who wants to spend less money on the military and more on diplomacy. We've heard from a real estate agent who wants to get rid of the mortgage interest deduction, and wealthy people who are fine forcing well-to-do seniors to pay more for prescription drugs. So this assumption that people only act in their self-interest is just really not what we see through the game, and I think that's an incredible takeaway. The second thing is that players who've played multiple versions of the game since 2008, not surprisingly, find it much harder to move the needle. I mean, let's face it, we're in a much different place than we were in April of 2008 when this game first went live. But they also say they're more willing to make deeper cuts than to programs they considered untouchable in previous versions of the game. Now, what this portends for the election or for what happens in Congress over the next several months, I have no idea, but I find that very interesting. And finally, the game has really taught us that the American people have an incredible capacity for understanding complex issues like the federal budget. We often estimate the public and their ability, and we talk down to them. And in the media, we're especially guilty of this. We oversimplify, we make everything generalized, but what we hear from people is not only can they understand this stuff, that they want a meaningful, nuanced, and detailed conversation about the federal deficit. They want to be involved in the process. And it allows us, these tools, and our partnership with Wilson, I think really allows us to get beyond the theoretical, beyond the political, really engage our communities and understand what policy and the role of government mean in their lives. And I just can't thank you enough for all being here, and if you, are interested in learning more about PIN, be happy to talk to you later, and happy playing.
So now is the time to play. Hopefully you have spent some time in the work we did before determining what badges you'd like to pursue. And also, if you find it helpful, you have before you cards that will actually enable you to, for the person not sitting near the computer in your sort of pairs, to sort of sift through and actually look in detail at all the information all at once right before you. So if you would please, again, keep in mind that you're going to be going through a round of play in about 30 minutes. That again, you all at a table should be pursuing a single goal and working together, even if you are, using 3 machines to do it. And again, what might be helpful too is if, have any of you decided to pursue the Obama badge? Would any of you like to be assigned to pursue the Obama badge? No, and one of you can pursue Obama, the other Romney, or would you all just rather pursue your own? Anyone who's interested, pardon? Your own? Okay, fine. Tafadhol, as you'd like. Okay, so pursue your own, but keep in mind that again, at the end of your play experience, we'd like a representative to come and present what each of you found and the sort of most salient points and that kind of stuff, okay? Great, thank you. And again, if you have any questions, many of us are around to help you. Thanks.
All right. Good morning, everyone. Our table actually focused on efficient government is our badge. So, as a group, we all decided that that should be kind of the goal, overarching goal that we're going to achieve. So with that, pretty much the mantra of efficient government was cutting spending. Obviously, that's in order to balance our budget and to move that needle from red to green. That was one of our goals, obviously, and as for all of us, increasing that budget bust as far as possible. So what we did is we kind of broke up into groups, and we all took a section, each one of these buildings. We had a little bit of background. Me and Jay, being in the Air Force and being an officer, we took defense and seeing where we can make budget cuts there. I believe Dan took science, and then Matt took Social Security, and so we're all looking at all these different aspects of our federal spending to see where we can actually kind of cut it out with the scalpel. So, for example, some of the things that we cut in defense was the stealth fighter program, seeing as conventional war isn't necessarily the same, and a lot of people in Pentagon are debating whether we really need these stealth fighters unless we go to war with a Russia or Iran, or who have these technologies. So that's kind of the mindset we were going through with defense. So I think we cut our defense, I don't know exactly percentage-wise. It was about 10%, and then we also cut defense as well with the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, so war spending. So with regards to Social Security and healthcare, we were definitely focusing on that since our goal was efficient government, because those are obviously the 2 biggest towers. Those are our biggest problems right now. So I think we decided to raise the age from 65 to 67 and what now? Okay, and chain the Social Security benefits to the CPI, whereas, what was it before? I mean, okay, Matt seems to know a lot more about that, so that was good. But yeah, so we really just trying to make a lot of cuts, and we did a pretty good job. Right, as of right now, we are what, 500 billion surplus right now, which is a lot, and we cut our let's see, our percentage of GDP debt is now at, what was that, 25? Okay, and our budget bust is year 2040. So for us, we wanted to cut the unnecessary, or what we felt is the unnecessary programs, and obviously we didn't necessarily look at a lot of the political implications of all this. I mean, getting, like Dan said, in Greece, when the age was raised, 1 year, people were going nuts. So, I'm sure raising the age from 65 to 67 would be a huge problem as well. But, so yeah, that was our idea.
For badges, we chose efficient government, energy independence, and competitive advantage. Louder? Can you guys hear me now? Okay. Sorry. And we ended up with a slight surplus of 126 billion. We spent a lot of our time cutting more than adding anything. For instance, we cut defense, we froze military spending, and we cut DARPA spending. What else did we do? We cut a lot from healthcare as well. We increased the elderly drug cost, and we limited malpractice torts, and we raised Medicare eligibility. In order to kind of hit the competitive advantage, we increased math and science spending. And for the energy independence, we did some funding for clean energy. And on top of that, tons of other cuts everywhere else, but we won't bore you with that.
Do you have a date by which?
Oh, yes, the date was 2036.
Thank you very much.
Green and the January 2013 bullet. Not that we made much progress on that one. I think we didn't understand exactly what it was, but we focused a lot first on cutting or decreasing the tax cuts and kind of increasing a lot of the taxes and, you know, just bringing in more revenue that way, because that's kind of one of the most important ways that you can actually balance a budget is to have more coming in than goes out. We then looked into the defense and diplomacy. Being a public policy school, having a lot of people who've worked abroad in that kind of foreign aid diplomacy area, we were very reluctant to cut that, although I don't believe we actually added to that part of the budget. But we did do a lot of large defense spending. I think we did 18%, it says. For healthcare, we did a lot with the Medicare, but not Medicaid. We left Medicaid alone, but raised the age for Medicare and kind of increased the age limits and the amount that people put in depending on their income, things like that. We also did a lot with, what are you pointing out? With the government budget in terms of Congress, decreasing their travel budget, decreasing that kind of thing, just to kind of bring them back in line with what we saw as being a proper budget for them. So we extended our year of bankruptcy to 2039, but we were very frustrated that we couldn't default on our debt. We felt like we should have that right and ability, and we kept being very frustrated that we couldn't just say no, we're not paying part of that back.
Main areas of cuts or of adjustments were in defense and taxes. With taxes, it was pretty much our only conflict area where we couldn't decide whether or not to cut the corporate taxes. We decided for purpose of competitive advantage that we should, but we offset that with increasing revenue by eliminating the mortgage deduction, which was also a point of conversation, and by simplifying the tax code. Defense, we went with elimination of war spending, or reduction of war spending, and then added back in some of the things that we thought were more important, like DARPA and foreign aid. So while making one big kind of draconian cut, we wanted to make sure there are areas that we kind of fed back in. Entitlement reform got a decent amount of attention as well. We did almost all of the Social Security options, which was raising the age, changing the index, and what was the last one? Increasing the cap at which it's taxed. Healthcare, we also did a lot of changes, primarily increasing the age, adding the public option, limiting malpractice, and increasing the wealthy prescription drug payments. We got to 2037 with about $300 billion surplus, 20.4% of GDP for the size of government, and the debt to GDP ratio at 44.8%.
I'd say at our table right off the bat, we kind of decided that, hey, there's 6 of us here. We have a big problem in front of us to fix the budget. We're going to kind of set aside some of the political ramifications. We didn't really debate what's going to happen with the next election. In fact, when we finished and we said, okay, we've fixed the budget problem, we now have a surplus, we've pushed the bust back by 8 years, we're probably all going to get voted out of office next term. So that's one of the things that really helped us reach a discussion, was separating the election worries.
I was just going to say that I guess it's more conceptual, but after playing the game, or through playing the game, I realized that there are things that that in my mind it's clearly like I would not sacrifice or I would not cut. And I kind of have this perspective that, well, everyone else probably agrees with me because this is the thing, you know. And so through playing the game, I realized like people draw the line on so many different issues in so many different places. And, you know, I guess that was an eye-opener. Like not everyone is going to agree. I mean, it seems kind of a simple concept, but not everyone's going to agree on what you think is the most important thing.
One thing I noticed is like we had a like $300 billion surplus in 10 years or something like that, but I didn't realize how much costs are going to keep rising over the next 25 years, because we were like, all right, we got a surplus in 2022, and then it says budget bust in 2037. So it just kind of struck me how even though we made all these changes, you need to keep cutting stuff even further into the future, because we had a $300 billion surplus, and then 8 years later, we're $500 billion under. So I thought that was interesting.
The farm subsidies saved a lot less than I expected. And I think there the importance is more in what they do and the effects they have throughout the economy, not just what the government pays for them. But I was really surprised that it was only, I think, savings of $24 billion.
Could easily go off the fiscal cliff here and do the blunt cuts both to the military and the discretionary spending with pretty much no repercussions. Made it a lot easier on us, because you don't even see the effects on the short-term economy. You know, your first look is 10 years down the road, and you can slide it and take a look, but we don't have to see whether or not, you know, this puts us into a double-dip recession or anything like that. We just do it and move on, and it ends up with great savings down the road, but it didn't really seem to have a consequence for the fiscal cliff.
Well, you know, I really feel like the Congress ought to be able to get its act together and solve this problem. How many people thought, well, I really sort of understand why it's hard for them to do it? Actually, you could raise your hand for both of those, I suppose, right? So, you know, both of those things, you know, can be true. It's a difficult problem to solve.
I would just say be honest with the population about the problem, because they kind of just try and blame the other side and kick the can down the road. But I don't think most people really know the severity of the issue, and that's a big problem.
I think there needs to be a frank discussion with the American people about what will happen if this budget goes bust. There's a lot of talk about, oh, we can't weaken our military. Well, maybe in 2035 we won't have a military. Maybe in 2035 we won't have Social Security. We won't have food stamps. We won't have any of these things. No politician has come forward and said frankly to the American people, we are facing an unmitigated disaster if we don't act. No one said that yet.
It seems that as soon as Congress runs up against something, like it's such a hard line, and instead of saying, oh, you disagree, oh, let's talk about it, they say, you disagree, that's the end of it.
But it shows the complexity of this budget. I've given a lot of thought to politically, I'm sort of involved politically, and I just wish that this was Congress at the Budget Committee, not at the University of Maryland. You know, there are two attempts at budget revisions. One is the Bowles-Simpson report, which came out several months ago, bipartisan, but was not adopted by either party. And also the Ryan budget, which is being criticized, but at least there's a budget. I won't get into the political aspect of it, but the president has not presented a budget in 3 years, and I think that's one of his duties and obligations, to present a budget. Anyway, that's getting too political. You know, just from a personal standpoint, I picked up one of the cards, and it dealt with eliminating the estate tax, which at my age is relevant. And I'm all for it, but I realize if you do that, you're going to, it's $631 billion more to the deficit. So we'll see what happens. There's an intermediate way of doing it, you know, less tax and more exemption. But anyway, I'm so pleased that that the Woodrow Wilson Center has partnered with the University of Maryland School of Public Policy. Don Kettle has been very instrumental in getting us together, and also the American Public Media. And we hope this is the beginning of more partnerships together. You know, the Wilson Center is, as Jane Harmon said, who is now the CEO, is very active. We have over 700 programs a year. And somehow I'd like to get you all on the mailing list, and perhaps you can attend some of our sessions. A lot on foreign policy, super part on the Middle East, the Arab Spring, the turmoil and violence going on in the Middle East. These are the types of things that we deal with at the Wilson Center. And having you come down, it's open to the public, would be, I think, you would enjoy some of our sessions. Apparently, 4 of the students here found mistakes in our new cards, and we're going to make those corrections before we go down to the Hill. But we're also giving out T-shirts for those who found the mistakes. So it's Max. I don't know where Max is. Jordan, Greg, and Sarari. You got the T-shirts. I guess my final comments is the one word which I derive from this whole study is compromise. And it's going to require both sides of the aisle to sit down and work out, you know, this budget. I mean, otherwise we're going to have a real problem on our hands. This fiscal cliff is no kidding around. It's really very, very serious. And another downgrade or a couple downgrades of our bonds, we're going to really be in trouble. So I hope that members of Congress realize that, and you ought to talk to your congressmen and senators about the situation and ask them to find solutions without just kicking the can down the road. Anyway, thank you for being here. I've enjoyed it. I've learned a lot, and I hope you did too. Thank you for coming. Yeah.